Give her a sec to get in.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming today.
So did all our folks that wanted to come in get in, Damien?
I believe so.
Okay, there's Bonnie. Hey, Bonnie.
Hey, Naomi.
So I think we have definitely more than a quorum. So why don't we get started? So the first thing I'd like to ask for is a roll call, please.
All right. Bonnie Weber. Oh,
I'm here. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Devin Reeds.
Devin, you're still muted.
Here.
Devin, oh, there we go. Donald Abbott.
Here.
Ed Lawson.
Here.
Jean Herman.
Here.
Jenny Breckus. Absent. Charlene Bybee.
Here.
Marsha Burke-Bigler.
Here.
Naomi Dewar.
Here.
Vaughn Hartung.
Here.
And non-voting member Katie Simon Holland.
Here.
All right. It looks like we have a quorum. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming to this special meeting, which I called for at the August 13th board meeting. We would have held it a little bit sooner, but Jeremy was away out of town, and so we scheduled it when we could. The next agenda item I want to approach is a salute to the flag. And Jeremy, do you have a flag?
Yep, I'll share it up right now.
Okay.
I just put one up.
Okay, well, we have multiple flags.
See it?
Thank you. It's beautiful. With that, I'd like to ask Don Abbott if you would, as our past chair, if you would lead us on the pledge.
Yep, I gladly will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, everybody. The next item is approval of the agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
Move to approve Abbott.
Second, Weber.
Good. So we've got a motion to approve from Mr. Abbott, second from Ms. Weber. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion is accepted. The agenda is approved. The next item on our agenda is public comment. Before we get to that, I was starting some opening remarks just to say welcome. Thank you for making time available today. We're planning a relatively short meeting. My expectation, probably about an hour, but it really depends on how much public comment we have and how long things take. But with that, I would like to open public comment. And Mr. Kerwin, do we have any registered public comment?
We do not have any for item 4, but we will for the next one, 5A.
So no general public comment, but there is specific comment on item 5.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, well, with that, we will turn to item 5. And item 5 is a presentation and possible direction to staff regarding the Truckee Meadows COVID risk meter, threat meter, it's listed, and participation with regional COVID response efforts. And to get us kicked off, I would like to turn to our attorneys who have done a little research. Whenever we want to start a new project, we want to make sure it is firmly in our bailiwick. And so I believe they have some advice for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Norman Azevedo. And on this topic of the issue that's before the board, I thought it would be important, especially given the treatment by the local paper yesterday, to address statutory authority of this agency with regard to issues pertinent to health and safety. And in that case, this is a land use planning agency, but the Nevada legislature determined at the inception of the agency that it specifically has authority to address topics involving the health and welfare of the county and all of its residents. Specifically, NRS 278.0261, subsection 4 is the delineation by the Nevada legislature of what it intended when it created regional planning. And specifically determined, specifically addressed that, I'm sorry, I got a little feedback there, that each local government and affected entity, and that's important, that term affected entity, shall exercise its powers and duties in a manner that is in harmony with the powers and duties exercised by other local governments and affected entities to enhance the long-term health and welfare of the county and all its residents. And what is important is that the Washoe County Health District is by definition deemed to be an affected entity. So the legislature, I guess if the circumstance present themselves, authorized and gave jurisdiction to the board to interact with the health district as long as it's in the long-term health and welfare of the county and all of its residents. So this issue, assuming the board decides to take it forward with regard to the tracking of the COVID cases, et cetera, is clearly within your jurisdiction. That is not the only reference in the statutes to health and welfare. For example, you can amend your plan if you determine, that's the comprehensive regional plan, that is in the best interest health of the agency and the local residents. In addition, the Washoe County Health District annually coordinates with the agency by filing its annual report, which is submitted to you folks, which you see. So I guess I would submit at this point that the topic of whether this agency has the authority and jurisdiction to proceed forward from a legal perspective is without question. And in that regard, I'll leave it there, Madam Chair. If there's any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them, but that's just our threshold analysis.
Okay, let me ask if there are any questions for our legal counsel. Mr. Lawson.
Norm, did this board give permission to go down that road and work with the health department?
At this juncture, no. There has been no directive from the board. And I'll go back and give you my understanding of the facts. What occurred was approximately in May of this year, after the pandemic began, Chairman Dewar approached your director, current director, and asked him to volunteer his time to assist the group, what is now being called the task force, in his personal time. At that time, I did confer with Mr. Smith, Dr. Smith, regarding his obligations to this board. There is a bylaw of the RPGB that does not allow any one individual member to direct staff, save and except the chairman, and that he is permitted under his, at the time was his interim contract, to do volunteer activities as long as it doesn't interfere with his duties as, at that time, interim director. But the board has taken no action as of this time. And so
the time that Mr. Smith was testifying in front of the health commission, is that on his own time or is that on RPGB time?
That was my understanding, was his own personal time. Okay. And I also understand, and I won't speak for Dr. Smith, is before he made any public appearances, he did coordinate with the then chair of the RPGB. And so tell him what he was going to do prior to doing it.
So, and maybe I can address something as well. And I just I want to note that we have an iPhone showing up, and that's actually the mayor of Reno. So she's here for questions as well. But if I could just take a moment. Some time ago, a few months ago, the mayor formed a kitchen cabinet, and it was to basically a learning opportunity to learn from the medical community and the science community about the COVID issues. And, you know, she has a duty and responsibility as our leader of Reno to do so and to be smart and to be able to make informed decisions when necessary. She not only invited members of the medical and science community, member from UNR, but she also invited 3 elected officials, and that was Mr. Von Hartong, Mr. Krista Hare, and myself, representing each of our 3 jurisdictions, to learn with her. One day she showed me, and this was just, you know, she sent me separate and apart from that, a picture of a meter, kind of looks like a lot like the fire meter code, if you will, red flag type thing, for several states and some cities. And I thought it was really cool. And I thought, well, how could we do something like that here? And at that time, on my own, I reached out to Jeremy and I said, this isn't any kind of official project, but would you be interested in helping me figure out if this is something we can even do here? And he said he was really interested and that he would be willing to do that on his own time. He volunteers for other organizations on his own time as well. And that had all been vetted with our legal counsel prior. So I think most of you know my day job. I'm a scientist. And so I was really curious, but I'm not the kind of scientist Jeremy is. He is a data scientist with special skills that I don't have. And so he said he was interested. And I'd had an experience prior where my staff on their own time invented what they called a robo-boat to help us do our job more safely at an agency I was working with. And after they had developed it and piloted it, they brought it to me, and I was so impressed with it. As a government agency, 3 USGS geologists had lost their life doing the sampling. I said, this is so cool, we as an agency should patent it. And we did patent it, and many other agencies ended up acquiring this boat, which was developed on their own volunteer time, but right in the line with their work, trying to make things safer. Well, anyway, Jeremy, as he delved into it, he said the data was all over the place. It was confusing, and he started trying to contact people to get data and information. And ultimately, he said, I think that we can do this. And so we shared it with the mayor. She was really impressed with it. In fact, she's on the phone again. I see her now. And so it began, and I said, I don't know if this will be anything. We're all volunteering here, but if it is something, then somebody may be interested in this. And as we started working on it, we realized that the health district, in fact, might be the very people that were. And at that point, we reached out to Kevin Dick and to Heather Kerwin, who are at the health district, and they said this would really help them. They were buried, just as when I was with flood. When we had a flood, there's nothing else you can do but respond. You can't think about things. You can't really do data analysis. It's hard to do communications. This life is hard when you're in the middle of an emergency. So Heather started participating. A couple of the doctors that the mayor had asked to help her learn about medical issues also participated. And so I think it's a good entree. I wondered if the board would like to ask me any questions, just sort of about the genesis.
I got another question. Did the board or the chair or the past chair give permission for Jeremy to use company assets to do this project on his own time?
I was just the vice chair at that time. So what I suggested, and maybe this was wrong, was that in order for him to do it, he had to post something on the website in order to have a platform. What I suggested to him is having something on your platform doesn't cost money, but supporting it does. And if it became something that we would talk to other agencies such as the health district or the city of Reno or any of the jurisdictions about actually formally hosting it, if it became something. So that's how that was.
And then I can say I knew he was doing what he was doing on his own time, but it was his own time. I definitely don't think any of us have the right to dictate what someone does on their own time. And my understanding was everything was done on his own time outside of normal business hours.
Right. There were meetings. There were some meetings during regular business hours, just to clarify, that Jeremy said he swapped out time. For example, the question was about the health district presentation. That was in work hours. Most of this, though, was after hours. So
if he decides to plan or do a graph for someone else on his own time, it's okay for him to use the assets of the regional planning agency.
Well, I mean, the only asset that I'm aware that he used was he's using his own personal computer, but he did use our website to post the product he was developing. So I don't know if that was right or wrong. But
software was bought. Well, I know
No.
City of Parks paid $25,000 for it a few years back. So the software is bought by the regional planning agency. This is the only problem I have here. The end product is awesome, no doubt. The way we got here does not justify the end of the deal. So I'm going to use this as an example, and then I'm going to shut up because it's the bottom line is I'm not happy about it. You forced us into a corner. If we vote no, then we can't vote no at this point. You've taken away my vote, and I'm not happy about that. But so the bottom line is, if I decide then I want Jeremy to come and work on street indexes and Sparks because it's good for the region, then that's okay for me to do. I just don't think this was handled correctly. It should have been brought before the board. We should have authorized it like we do every other contract that we do for the RTC or anyone else we do research work for, or it comes before the board and the board authorizes that work. So this didn't happen in this time. I get it. I understand. I can hear all the excuses, but well, the next time that this does happen, I'm going to cite this incident right here. I've been on this board for 10 years. It's never happened this way.
Okay, well, that is fair, and I appreciate that, Mr. Lawson. I'll call on you in just a moment, Ms. Weber. I appreciate that, Mr. Lawson. If there was an error, I agree with you. He could use his own time, even for if you had a special projects on roads. Perhaps the use of the website was inappropriate, and I'm willing to accept that responsibility, and I appreciate you bringing it up. Ms. Weber, I saw you have your hand up.
Yes, thank
And,
you.
and before we go any further, we do have Health District was on here, and I know they are very time constrained. They needed to be on and off. They have another concurrent meeting. And I know, would it be okay if we just heard from them and then go back to our presentation and discussion? Any discussion? Would that be okay with the board?
I think so. For me, it is.
You go ahead, Ms. Weber, and then we'll switch. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Let me call on Mr. Dick, who's joined us. I know that, the Health District was interested in this emerging tool, and I just wanted to hear from him.
Thank you, Kevin Dick, District Health Officer, for the record. And I appreciate you accommodating my schedule today. So still very busy over here in our response. But I did want to provide a comment today. I wanted to express my appreciation for the work that the task force has done in developing this meter, and the work particularly that Jeremy Smith has done in developing and getting it set up. We had the opportunity to participate in this. I had a meeting with your chair and Dr. Smith, and along with Heather Kerwin from the Health District, and we were able to talk through the approach that was being taken, the objectives of the risk meter, and the measures that had been explored. We did have that opportunity to provide some input on some of the other data measures that might be considered in looking at maybe early indicators of what was occurring in our community. And some of those have been incorporated into the data that's looked at, and that's the algorithms that are developed. So we are providing data to help to support this initiative. We think that the objective of trying to provide information in a more easily understood color-coded format is one that's good, and we think has the potential to be quite beneficial for our community. And so it's been a very thoughtful approach, we think, in the way this has been developed. There's also an understanding that we're in uncharted territory, and that there's a willingness to see how this works moving forward, and to make adjustments in the data that's being used and the algorithm that's processing that data to determine the different color levels if it's determined that it's not working properly and it could be improved upon. So I think those are all really, really good things that this task force has been engaged with. Time will tell if this is something that's useful for the community. But there are a lot of, there's a lot of different measures that are out there. We've got a lot of information on our data dashboard. To the extent that this can distill something down that's more readily understood by the community, we think that can provide some benefit. We also think it's important, and the task force has incorporated the constant precautions that people still need to take. A concern that we always have is that we see things are improving and people let their guard down, and we go from improving to things becoming even worse than they were before. So we think that there are the appropriate messaging that's been developed around this. And so in summary, I would just wanted to thank everybody in the task force for their efforts and encourage you to move forward with making this available for the community, and we'll see how useful it can be, and be responsive if there are changes that need to be made to that. So appreciate the opportunity for the comment, and just wanted to let you know, Chair Dewar, that Heather Kerwin is supportive as well, but she's in our ops section meeting right now, so she won't be commenting today, but I'll be getting back down there in just a minute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for joining us. I knew there would be many people interested, and I'm glad your agency believes that at some point, you can either utilize this and or support it in a different way. So we'll see if it's any good. That's one thing.
Well, thanks for the work that you've done to develop
Okay.
it, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a platform for this for the coming months.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then, Mr. Lawson, I just wanted to respond to one thing that you said. I've already acknowledged that I have no problem. I don't think anybody here has a problem with Jeremy using his volunteer time, even if it's in the day. He's on salary. His day is like 24 hours. But one thing that you said that I want to be clear on, I don't think that I took away anybody's vote. Jeremy is already offered to continue volunteering. We could easily migrate this off TMRPA's website to several people have offered. So I want to be clear, if the people here think that this would interfere with Jeremy's other duties or take too much time or be an inappropriate project, that's what we're here to discuss. And it is not yes, no, it's either in our bailiwick or not. We either want to support this or we don't. Jeremy's offered to continue. It's not going to fail. Maybe Arena will step up, maybe Sparks will step up. So I just want to be clear. It's about this agency here right now. And again, I fully accept the responsibility of Jeremy using the website as his development platform, our TMRPA website. I think that's really the only place that perhaps we probably should have reconsidered. So it's very well taken constructive criticism. So I thank you.
Well, let me just ask Jeremy then. Can you do this work, Jeremy, if you don't have access to the software at the Regional Planning Agency?
Yes, I can. Jeremy Smith, for the record. I built this using my personal computer and open source Python code and data that's publicly available on the web daily, with the exception of data that did get provided to me by the health district about risk assessments. That's the one thing that I don't think you can get off the internet, but everything's available. And I would say that I also understand your point about the website, and I think I should have been more cognizant, so that was a mistake on my part. It was a convenience thing, and understood it will never happen again.
If you can do it all on your own, Jeremy, you have my blessing. I just reading a newspaper article to find out what's going on in my own agency is a little disturbing after 10 years. So, and that'll be enough from me.
Okay. All right. With that, let me ask if there's any more questions.
Excuse me, I hope that you will return to me.
I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Weber. Thank you. Yes, back to you.
Chairwoman. I too have a concern. I think that it should have been brought before us much sooner as a body when we were working on this project. And I agree with Councilman and Mayor, I believe, Lawson, that for the years that I've been on in this organization, the 12 years prior and almost 2 years now, so I've been on the Regional Planning Governing Board, and I don't believe anything like this has ever come before us in all these years. And I have to express a concern that there was much work done on this before. It should have been announced to us much sooner. You have an acting director of an organization that everyone knows who he is, what he's doing, and you're still using him on his own time, and that's great. And what you've done is great. However, we do need to talk about the improprieties here, because there, in my opinion as well, there are some of those, and we have a great end result, but we can't have this happen again. We've set a precedent now. And so I believe that there needs to be some discussion about that. However, it can't ever happen again. And so somewhere along the line, we've got to address that, because the public knows, and all the agencies know that we had an acting director doing this. And so they still think it's coming from the regional planning agency itself. And so if anything happened like this to any of us, I think it needs to be addressed. I think we need to have that conversation by this board, and there needs to be some action taken on what has already happened. However, do I think that's the end result right there? No, but we have to have that discussion. And Madam Chairwoman, I hope that you will allow us to have that discussion.
Yeah, why not? Of course.
Weigh in on that part of it. Okay.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite agenda to have a formal conversation, but this is a good pre-conversation to that. And I'm absolutely happy. And I want to say this, you know, what you have to go back to intent and emergency as well. And you are completely right, Ms. Weber, that what any of us does is reflective on our organization. We're not a unit separate. I mean, the fact that Jeremy volunteers, let's say, to feed people, he's still Jeremy and he's still the interim director, or whatever I do on my own time, I'm still a city councilwoman. There's no getting away from that. So I totally accept that. The Mayor Shivi has asked me if she could speak, and I know that she's traveling in a medical office. So I don't know if she can hear me and if she can unmute herself. If not, I'll go to another speaker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, sorry if it sounds distorted. I am en route, so you might get some feedback. First of all, I want to say thank you to everyone for having this meeting. I'm really glad that we're talking about it. I think everyone needs to understand some context. And what I want to make really clear, first of all, is we are happy to, host it at the City of Reno at any time. And if, that's ever a problem, I want everyone on this board to know that the City of Reno will be the first to step up to make sure we get the tools together to make sure we do everything we can to fight this pandemic. I want everyone to know right now, we are living in unprecedented times. I don't have to tell all of you guys that. I think out of all of us, especially elected leaders, we are facing something we have never seen before. We're navigating waters we have never seen before. We have people dying and we have businesses decimated. We have people unemployed. Right now, all of us, that should be on our top of mind. That's got to be first and foremost. So if there's anything that I would just ask is absolute regional cooperation from everyone, because right now, this is something that is so dire and so critical. So I would just offer that if there's anything that was used at the Regional Planning Commission in any capacity, the City of Reno or myself, I'll pay for it personally. I don't care what it takes to save lives and to help people's businesses stay open. We've all got to survive this together. We've never seen, times like this, in our history. I mean, since I've been alive. So, hold on, the nurse just came out, so hold on. So I'm trying to do two things at once. But the other piece that I want to say is what you need to understand the context here, and I think this is super important. Out of this meeting of these medical experts, and you guys all know this, we've never had to reach out to our medical experts for anything. Whoever would thought we'd be in a pandemic? We usually reach out to our public safety guys, our fire and our police, right? They're sort of our experts in disaster. The medical field has never been at the table. This is all very foreign and new to us. But what I want to say is with this meeting or this group that, I've been talking to, all the medical experts and public health officials, I have to tell you, we never thought in a million years we would be able to come up with a tool. That wasn't what this was intended for. But we all feel powerless and helpless, right? And this is a way for all of us to actually do something to help everyone. So I want everyone to know in the region that this was not something that we ever thought we would have a tool or something that we could help everyone with. We never thought in a million years. It wasn't, and we also were very, very clear about, hey, we don't want information getting out there because what if it's not vetted? What if it's not right? What if we're miscommunication? That's not helpful. There's been so much miscommunication as it is. It's not helpful if we're out there sharing information that's not vetted. And so actually we had to reach out to Dr. Azam from the state, also, the health department, and say, hey, is this something that could help you? We're not really sure. So this was never something in the making, or we thought that we would need tools to use or, be in this position. It wasn't until the last meeting that, people said, yeah, we think this could be used as information and a way to educate people on our behavior, to help us get open, to help us stay safe, help us save lives. This is nothing more than a behavioral modifier, and it puts it back into the hands and the power of the people. I want everyone to know, again, I think this has got to be the first and foremost thing that we think about is saving lives and helping our economy and saving people's jobs. And so I want to thank all of you here today, but I want you to also know there was no ill intention or ill will. We didn't even know we'd get to this point. And if Dr. Azam would have said, hey, we don't think this is, valuable at all, we certainly would have dumped it. It wouldn't have been an issue or a thing. But I want you to know, I will step up in any way to make sure that anyone, whoever can come to the table to help save lives in our economy, I will gladly pay for that. And if that's what we need to do, I just want you to know that. And I want to say thank you to Jeremy, because what you've done is invaluable. And this region is so blessed to have you. So I want to thank the board too for having this meeting. I think it's great, it's critical and very pertinent at this time. But I just want everyone to have context here. Nothing secretive about it, nothing going on behind the scenes. And again, as a region, we all need to do this together. If there's any one issue we should do together, it's this one.
Thank you so much, Mayor, for providing that context and background, probably better than I could. I saw a bunch of hands. And so I want to be, take them in order. We had Council, Ms. Weber. I saw Ms. Bybee next, and I saw Mr. Reese, I think, poked up his hand. So Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I couldn't agree more with Mayor Sheevy on the priority for all of us in the region, in the state, and the country of feeling helpless on what we can do to address the coronavirus and its impact it's had on all of us. And we know in the positions we're in, or even in our personal lives, the impact, no doubt. Top priority, trying to get businesses open, trying to protect those that are most vulnerable, whatever we can do to move forward, get kids in school, to do whatever it takes. I think most of us, and I know I'm here at the table to support that. And I really look at what Dr. Smith has done, and his knowledge and expertise is invaluable in helping us get there. But I too have a problem with the process. And when, as electeds, we get caught flat-footed when we read an article in the paper on something we don't even know is really happening. When I reach out to the former chair, when I see something about some task force that's doing all this work with medical experts and Mayor Sheevy's put together, and I went, well, whoa, wait a minute, does Sparks even have a voice there? How come I don't know anything of what's happening? Because then people come to us, and our constituents in all three jurisdictions trust us to be informed so that we can answer the questions and not sit there and go, I have no idea. And why don't I have any idea? And specifically, being on Regional Planning Governing Board and with the planning agency, and Jeremy, even on his own time, I question, well, we've done projects with the RTC and other agencies, but the board always knows what we're doing, and we approve the time to do that. We gather income from other agencies like RTC for work that is done. So it's not unusual that we have worked with our executive director, Kim did before, now Jeremy, outside of what TMRPA is doing in Regional Planning Governing Board. That we have precedent on that, but the process that wasn't followed, and for one member to be able to for this to happen with one member and the rest of us not even knowing, that's what I have a problem with. I really do, because I don't think any one of us should be able, and even the chair, as having been chairman of this agency and understanding my responsibilities, even the chair is responsible to keep us informed, and we weren't informed at all. And that's where my issue is. Not with what we're talking about, not with the meter, not with addressing the COVID, but this process of how we operate and how through open meeting, even the task force, 4 elected officials, and there's no open meeting. And the public and the media especially is always going to attack us because that's what they do, so our credibility is affected if we are not above board on everything we do. If we're not, if we're violating open meeting law, if we're not doing public notice, if we're not allowing public comment, I mean, it leaves us open to even more criticism. And I think that's reality, but that also hinders our ability to do what we can really do and do well. So what the meter is, I'm fine with, but I agree with Mayor Lawson and Councilwoman Weber where my issues are with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. And I'll come back to you, but I have a comment. I'd like to call Mr. Hartung. He had his hand up next.
Hey, thank you, Madam Chair. So I might be able to give maybe a little more context here. When the mayor formed this informal group, it was made up of some ER docs and a pediatrician and some business owners and business people around town. I was invited, I believe, because I had written a white paper which kind of listed some thoughts on how we could get businesses reopened. Dr. Smith was not there for many of the first meetings. I remember the first meeting when he kind of showed up. After that, I contacted Jeremy. I had a conversation with him about this being on his personal time. He assured me that this was all done on his personal time. And I mean, I don't feel like I'm in a position to dictate when someone wants to be civic minded and do these kinds of things. So I really didn't question it. I've not attended the last probably 4 or 5 of these meetings because it's just unfortunately been it has conflicted with my personal schedule and with other things that have been going on. So I don't feel necessarily that there was from my perspective, at least initially, that Dr. Smith did anything wrong. So I guess the question for me is if we're going to establish some parameters, does he need to ask us before he can go out and donate his time doing anything in the community? If he's going to work at the food bank, or if he's going to mentor someone in statistics and mathematics at UNR, give his time up there. That's my question. And so I took him at his word. I still take him at his word that he did this on his own time. And the skill set that he has is obviously a valuable one. And I understand the angst with the crossover, but I guess what we're going to have to do is establish some parameters that we say, look, this is our expectation of you, and I understand the optics. I don't disagree. I actually hadn't even seen the COVID meter until it showed up in the paper, again because I had not attended many of these meetings in the past. And I say meetings, they're very informal gatherings. They were more think tank than anything. And there was no attendance, there was no role or any of that. It was just very, very informal. So the fact that something has come out of it I think is good, but maybe we do need to have a deeper conversation. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. I will take all of this under advisement. I will put an item on the agenda. I really just think we need to give some specific direction on what Jeremy's parameters are. And again, as a board member, I did this as not as a regional planning vice chair, but as a city person that was involved, that happened to know Jeremy and reached out to him. I mean, it's as simple as that. but we can certainly clarify. We can address it in our bylaws. We can address it in the contract, however you guys would like. I know we're short on time, and I want to call Mr. Reese. I've really kind of pledged that this would just be an hour meeting, and let me just acknowledge this. I understand. I didn't know an article was going to appear in the paper either. When I spoke to Ann Jeanette, she said, this is a pretty cool thing. There was not much more than that. So, whatever she writes, she needs to own. I don't happen to agree with many of her conclusions or her perspective. I think by that article and other things some people have said is turned something very good and positive and put a kind of negative, almost malevolent spin on it. And I think that's super unfortunate. But that being as it may, I'm going to call Mr. Reese. I know you're time limited as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I apologize for not being visible this afternoon. I've just got a lot going on, as many of you do. First, I want to say thank you to you, Chair Dewar, and my colleague, Mayor Sheevy, and for the members of the kitchen cabinet that assembled to start talking through this. I think part of the thing that concerns me is that we are making much more out of this than is necessary. I'm not going to run my life by what a very talented reporter reports on local government machinations. I'm discouraged by a number of my colleagues who are, very much interested in the process. I think sometimes government rules and red tape and the things that are involved in the minutia of our lives are very disconnected from the people that we serve. And so I would encourage this body not to make the perfect be the enemy of the good. I mean, I think we can do what we're doing and stay on a path. I'm reminded frequently that there isn't a playbook for how to operate in a pandemic. And I absolutely know that the folks who've been involved in this have done so with the right intentions, putting in hundreds of hours of their own time to learn coding language and to understand the science behind what is, quite frankly, a very unknowable situation involving COVID-19. The truth is that this has never happened in the history of this organization. It's unlikely to happen. In lawyer speak, we say that that's not capable of repetition. So I'm not sure what we are grousing about or objecting to today. It's something that's happened in a very specific way because of the pandemic. And I, for one, am happy that it is happening and that we will have, it sounds like, a very good resource and tool that will be scientifically based, that will help us to protect our community and allow our businesses to open. So for my part, I am thankful that this has happened. I think the one thing that is most frustrating to me is I want to make sure that Dr. Smith is honored in his efforts and is in not, meaning I wouldn't have asked him necessarily to volunteer his time. I'm happy that he did. He's proven very time and time again to be a gracious human being. I would have said regional time, regional issue that affects all of us in a way that is powerful, and you have a specific skill set, go help us figure out what's going on. And so for my part, the only thing that I see as a failing of this process is that we have not given the space and accommodation to Dr. Smith to do the work when he needed to do it. I know that he is capable of many things and has skills that I do not possess. And so again, I thank him, I support him. I support the work that, Chair Dewar, you have set out to do with the assistance of all these very excellent people. And I'm not going to stand on any formality or make a belief that that formality is something that we should be overly worried about. We're in a pandemic, all hands on deck. Let's get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Reese, for that perspective, Ms. Holland. And then I'm going to just ask, I don't know if the group is interested in even seeing what Jeremy's worked on. I don't know that it's particularly relevant because it's a work in progress. But the reason that we're here today is things emerged. It became something important. It became a real thing. At that moment, as soon as I became chair, I said, we need to bring this to the board and see if we want it to be a DMRPA project. So, I'm sorry that we didn't have a meeting at, 3 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago where it could have been discussed when he was first starting to kind of come to grips with it, but there we are, a little imperfect. Ms. Holland.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to add a couple of things. I absolutely am respectful of the need for process. And of course, all of us know that during emergency times, sometimes those processes become different. But one of the things I know everyone on this call has been involved in regional emergencies before, and I certainly was starting as early as the early 90s. And the biggest problem we always have in emergencies revolves around communication, making sure that the right people get the right information at the right time. And I think Chair Doer and Dr. Smith have heard that it would have been better for all of you to have been informed early. I only heard about it at the RPGB meeting a couple of weeks ago, and and certainly said, wow, the school district, we need to understand this as well. So I think this is a really great learning opportunity for everybody to be reminded of the need for good communication and making sure that we all stop and think about who needs to know what we're doing, when do they need to know it, and how do they need to know it. And I think everybody's recognized that can be improved upon. But I did want to share the benefit of some history. As long ago as the early 90s, the Regional Planning Governing Board did get involved in regional issues, such as the Law Enforcement Task Force. That was a creature of the Regional Planning Governing Board. This agency and the Governing Board have a history of taking on regional issues like this and having an impact. That Law Enforcement Task Force led to the Public Safety Training Center. It led to the 800 megahertz radio system. It led to early discussions about consolidation of law enforcement. So, there are big issues that are way outside what we would typically consider to be regional planning, but they affect the regional planning decisions, and they have been taken on. And as Mr. Acevedo said, anything that falls under the health and welfare of the county can be the purview of this governing board. So I applaud the effort, and I also recognize, and I think many of you have said it very much better than I have, that we broke down in the communication and the process, and I think that message has been heard. So I just wanted to share a little perspective on that.
Thanks, Ms. Holland, for your historic lesson there too, because these are things that many of us are not as intimately aware of as you are, and I appreciate that perspective. Yes, I can acknowledge to all of you that we have learned, and I wish that we could have had a formal meeting on this earlier. At least we did daylight it in the director's report at the last meeting and talked about it and said, let's form a meeting to talk about it in more detail. With that, I would like to, since I did pledge to try to keep this a short meeting, I'd just like to ask Mr. Smith not to present details, but just talk to us about what are you looking for from us? What would you like us to authorize you to do?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to just also echo that I understand the message is heard, and this will not be an issue going forward. Basically, I think what we're looking for is something on the order of about, not to exceed about 10 hours per week across all of our staff. That's about 5% of our time, and that's a not to exceed that, we could feel comfortable working on this project and helping to assist. And if it, and also to use the website, if you guys feel it's appropriate, as either a development platform or potentially the final resting place of this tool. It all can be transferred to another site, so that's not an issue at all if you guys require that. But just I think your direction to be able to spend a little bit of time on this during the regular workday would make it a lot easier to achieve.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Lawson.
So my questions were answered, Jeremy, that you did this, and I take you at your word too, 100% that you're doing this on your own time. Just for another historical perspective is smarter cities. We agreed that the regional planning agency was going to be the keeper of information. Pardon me, got a little tickle in my throat. So I have no problem with continuing that to be in that information capacity. And if you want a motion to get this going a little bit, I'm going to make a motion that we give you up to the 10 hours a week to finish the project off and keep the information with the planning agency because it will be consistent then across the road. The board, you know, if you have a housing question, you go to regional planning. If you have a utilities problem, you go to regional planning. You got a COVID question, probably going to go to the health department first, but all the information will be available at regional planning. So in keeping in that spirit of doing it, I think we beat the horse enough. My questions were answered very well, and that no assets were used by in your time in doing this, and I'm taking you at 100% at your word that I trusted. You did do this all on your own time. So with that being said, I think it's time we just move forward. So my motion is to go ahead and approve it and keep it with the Regional Planning Governing Board or Planning Agency.
Thank you.
Second.
I have a, I'm sorry, was that a second from?
Second by Hartung with discussion, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I have a motion from Mr. Lawson, second from Mr. Hartung with discussion.
Under discussion, would it be appropriate for us to also go back to our own respective agencies and ask for a small amount of CARES Act money to cover this? Because this is, I mean, this comes right under, dealing with COVID. It comes under that umbrella. And I think that this is an appropriate ask. And I'm not talking about a lot of money. I think if each one of us threw in, I don't know what 10 hours a week is, but, $10,000 or $20,000 probably will cover the whole entire thing.
So maybe 10 or 20,000 from each agency. I think Jeremy and I talked about what is 5% of their time equals around 50,000 total. So it might be 10 or 20,000 from each organization out of their CARES money, if you all are interested in carrying that message back.
And we will definitely have to go ask about that.
Yeah.
Each one of our agencies. Yeah.
We've identified $35 million worth of needs for $19 million worth of dollars.
Well, it may be that those who can pay, and those who can't. I mean, but I think coronavirus dollars, CARES dollars is a very good possible funding source ultimately. And if the board does move forward with a motion of 5% of Jeremy's time, his staff's time, use of the website, et cetera, then we can talk about the funding in the next 2 weeks with other agencies. But I'd like to just stipulate that this would be out of our current budget, and any supplemental, I will go after it and I will try to get it. Is there any other discussion, Mr. Abbott?
Yeah, so going back in time when I was still the chair, I believe Dr. Smith sent out an email July 6th talking about the COVID threat meter, COVID data portal that went out. So, I think he definitely was keeping everyone somewhat in the loop. There were some links. I remember I went to him. So it's not, he definitely was key. And I looked at the email chain, it was all of us. So if you didn't get it, I'm not sure what happened, but that was an email that went out. I know I replied to it. I'm not sure who else did to Jeremy, but, that was a conversation we've been having, and now it's September. And so I definitely support it. I think it's a good idea. I think this opened a conversation about volunteering and all that we should have, that we probably never would have thought of. But I am supportive of the current motion as well.
And thank you, Mr. Abbott. I really appreciate that, because you do have that historical perspective as chair. And I too got the email in July. I got emails later July. I got emails, we had the update in August. So I don't think, I'm just going to say this on the record, I agree with you. I don't think anybody's trying to keep it under their hat that he was working on this on his own time. He was using the TMRPA website, so there is that. But I appreciate those comments. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other comments before we vote? Yes, Ms. Bybee.
Madam Chair, I just wondered if Director Smith is going to be giving us any highlights of his work, just encapsulated information. Is that on another item, or would that be now?
What I would request, and this is up to the board, I'm just being cautious of timeframes. I know some people have to leave in a few moments. I'd like to just vote on whether we're willing to allow up to 5% of agency staff time and work product on this, as the motions have been made. And then I am very willing for whoever wants to stay on to get a very brief presentation. Absolutely. Mr. Lawson, we have a motion on the floor by you.
prior to the vote, I would say no, that he should not talk about it because then it would not be on his own time.
Okay, very
He
good.
is the director, acting as the director right now.
Okay, well taken. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. All
Madam
in
Chair,
favor?
if I may.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith.
Yeah,
Dr. Smith, sorry.
I believe we have two public comment pieces for
Oh,
this item.
I apologize. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Kerwin, public comment?
Yeah, the first we'll have is Bob Fulkerson. We'll give him
Okay.
3 minutes, and then there's a voicemail that we will play after that.
Okay.
And that is from Tammy Callahan.
Okay.
Thank you very much. My name is Bob Fulkerson, and I want to say I do appreciate the work of Dr. Smith and appreciate his expertise and his leadership and the public service of you all. And I support a regional approach to get data and information to the public. But when I heard about this amorphous COVID threat meter task force at last week's Washoe County School District meeting, I did some digging and found there had been no transparent process, which with all due respect to Councilman Reese, I don't think a public process should be a casualty of the pandemic. It's disturbing that the Chamber of Commerce and conservative interests had seats at this table, but not advocacy or worker organizations. That being said, I'd like to read the first jaw-dropping paragraphs of Ann Jeanette's September 2nd article that the attorney disparagingly referred to earlier. Last week, the Washoe County School Board had a problem. The board wanted to keep schools open, but was having a hard time deciding what criteria to use to assess whether the coronavirus spread was too great and safe to do so. And end quote, and it goes on to say that if they used the governor's criteria, they couldn't open. And if they used their own criteria, it couldn't open. So at Tuesday, they ditched both options and they decided to go shopping to this amorphous task force. And that brings me to today's meeting. Somebody needs to send a message to the school district that this is not going to be applicable to the schools and they should go data shopping elsewhere. And it shouldn't serve as camouflage for the political cowardice of the trustees and the superintendent who can't be bothered to have their own transparent or even halfway logical process on how or whether to close schools. And in the time I'd have left, I just want to remark on Councilperson Bybee's remark that the public and the media will always criticize us because that's what they do, end quote. And I know that's a popular refrain at Tea Party meetings and at Trump rallies, but statements like that insult me and the general public and journalists should have no place in a public body. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fulkerson. You said there was another comment, Mr. Kerwin.
That is correct. I will try to share my screen and audio and play the voice message that we received. And can everybody hear this? Oh, it's not playing. Hold on.
Yes.
Can everyone hear that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Dear members of TMRPA, regarding item 5A, thank you for your service. This interagency task force has raised some sincere questions for me as a native Reno-nite and as a former teacher of Washoe County School District. I continue to serve Washoe County school students and families in a private capacity. It is common knowledge Washoe County School District Board of Trustees consists of elected officials, and their interests are transparent and set forth prior to their being elected. Their primary interest is in education, as opposed to often competing interests across a breadth of community concerns. TMRPA is a formulation of elected and appointed officials. I have grave concern that with this, they each may be influenced in ways that conflict with acting in the best interest of their constituencies they are elected to represent. Educating our youth and supporting families during this pandemic should be our only concern of the school board. To go outside and create a special task force with multifaceted interests is questionable and absurd. Holding the current Board of Trustees to a high level of accountability is what is necessary at this time. Indeed, distance learning was not given the attention warranted based on national and state data. Our Board of Trustees is responsible for our elementary students starting school on August 17th. This task force is not an entity I support in any way, shape, or form. The Board of Trustees needs to step it up and be responsible. Creating a beard of people that have multiple agendas to hide behind and ultimately have different interests is just wrong. There is a reason there is an independent elected school board. Its function is independent of city council, county commissioners, and other elected or appointed officials for a reason. We want the people who care solely about educating our children and supporting families in this process making decisions. How this looks needs to not be influenced by other interests. Managing educational resources for our youth and our community is the sole responsibility of the Board of Trustees. 30 plus years of teaching, I have seen grit, tough decisions implemented, and even hard lessons learned from a multiple number of school boards. Today we call for moral strength, professional expertise, commitment, and an unbiased focus, targeting issues and measures we can effectively put forth while putting educating children front and center. It is of dire importance that we not fragment that focus by other outside interests or individuals. They have responsibilities that may compromise the ultimate mission of what is best for educating our youth. While those other interests may be laudable and legitimate, they are outside the scope of the school board and do not belong in this arena. In closing, it is hopeful that this task force is dismantled. These individuals can separately write, propose their thoughts and ideas to any board member or collectively at a school board meeting. Sincerely, Tammy Callahan.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Callahan. And then I know we have another public comment from our Mayor Sheevy, who asked to speak during public comment. Mayor Sheevy, I don't know if you're still on the line.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, I want to say thank you so much to this board. I really appreciate all of you and everything that you do for the region. And I know that when we all sit on a board together, we all have different thoughts and ideas, and sometimes, you know, we cloud them. But I want to say thank you so much for all of your leadership, especially now more than ever. And the reason being is this is the time to show our region that we are all working together. We cannot afford to, to be fighting with one another. We have got to really focus on saving lives and saving jobs and our economy. And so I want to say thank you to all of you for putting that first. Again, I want to remind you, I have a lot of kitchen cabinets. I have one for mental health. I have one for downtown development.
Blight.
Can you hear me?
Yes, for Blight, I think.
Yeah, well, I was going to say downtown development, which was Operation Downtown. And these are just experts that I'm able to listen to and hear their feedback. And I would never bring it to the council unless I thought there was something that we could all use to make our community better. And I was really worried about getting any messaging or any product out there without having someone like Dr. Azam here or Dr. Lamarca hear what we were doing. Because again, I think right now more than ever, we all have to message together and be a region together. And I do want to address Mr. Fulkerson. I was very clear when the school board had attended, one of the meetings, and I said this is not to be used in any way for anything like that. I want everyone to be clear that this is only about our behavior and how well we're doing, because people look at numbers and they don't really understand what those mean. This is all that is. It has nothing to do with schools stay open or shut, anything in that capacity ever, ever, ever. This is just so all of us can measure our behavior. And just to keep it really, really simple, but this is not intended to dictate to the school district. And I was very clear about that. So I want everyone to know that. And you really need to know that there wasn't anything that we would, that I would want to release prematurely in any way. And it's sad that it was, because look at the confusion that it sort of brought. And that is really sad, because I think you can take information and you can use, scare tactics, and that's not good. And that's the very reason you would never want to be out there until information and sources are really vetted, especially in your medical community. I would tell you that. I've listened to a lot of experts, and some I would say are really, really great, and some maybe not, so great, or maybe not, what I think is the best interest of keeping our community safe and healthy, right? And that doesn't help me to go out there and use information that is, incorrect or dangerous. And I think information sometimes can be dangerous if it's not vetted or it's not fact checked. How many times do we see on Facebook or social media a headline and everyone agrees and believes it? In today's world, that's not necessarily the truth. So I want everyone to know that I'm so grateful for all of your participation, but I also want everyone to know the only reason, we want to just make sure that we are communicating the same way. But guess what? We would never release this meter if we never thought that it would be helpful, or we had people that said this could really help your community modify behavior and just check and see how we're doing. And that's all it is. It's just very, very simple. So it's sad that it sort of, kind of came to this in such a way, but I want to say thank you to all my colleagues and all of you guys on the board for, putting our region first. And it shows that that's what you've done today. So I'm grateful. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Sheevy. And with that, we have a motion, we have a second. Barring any further public comment.
Madam Chairwoman, I would like to ask a question.
Oh, sure.
If you wouldn't mind.
No, go right ahead.
I'm going to support the motion, but I wanted to ask a quick question. I heard that there is a press conference scheduled for tomorrow, and I'm wondering if this agency will be a part of that press conference, or what the situation is.
Well, I will just answer that if we authorize Mr. Smith to spend his time on this project from this point forward, whatever he needs to do to further that project, he's going to do without official permission from me or anyone. I mean, I hope he'll let us know, but,
talking about that there is a press conference scheduled, I believe, for tomorrow. And if the Regional Planning Agency is going to be involved, should this motion go through, which I think it will be.
Okay.
I just want to.
Okay, Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Dr. Smith, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Yes, I think if the motion is approved, then we would like to participate in the presser. But if you do not approve it, then I would plan to stand down.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that there is this scheduled, and that this motion will allow him to be able to be a part of that press conference. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. And I think I saw Ms. Bybee.
No.
No. Was there anyone else who wanted to comment before we vote on the motion? All right. Thank you, everyone, for those good comments. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. It shows that we can stumble, but we're not going to fall as a team. So I appreciate all of your support. And again, I'm sorry if I got my wires crossed or didn't adequately communicate myself, or our former Chair Abbott or Director Smith. We might have all made a bit of a misstep. There's no question. That is still part of this item. We had noticed that we would also take a look at this meter in a very high level way, since you're still working on it, Mr. Smith. But do you want to talk to us about some interim work products that you've done on your own time and that will now become part of your official time? Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Prunty. Oh, no, she wasn't waving. Okay, go ahead.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thank you very much. I've got about 5 slides I can share with you, and I'll keep it really nice and quick here. Okay, so hopefully, are you guys seeing my shared screen?
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, this is the what you would arrive at the homepage of what I think we were calling the threat meter, but now is kind of being changed to the risk meter. It's a simple gauge, and it has a setting. You can see that there's kind of some tick marks inside each of the colors, so you can kind of distinguish between a lower orange and a higher orange, or a lower yellow, higher yellow, kind of showing what direction the community is moving day by day. And I'll show you kind of how that works in a sec. And with each of the colors that comes with it is some advice for folks to potentially empower them to modify their behavior in response to what's happening with these COVID-related data pieces. So there's, any given day we could run this model by updating the data, and it would produce a different color. Here is an example of the language, the guideline language that goes along with each color. This is in process with some of the doctors on that team. To recently, the idea of adding a purple or a severe color at the very high end of the gauge was introduced, just to sort of put that, very serious things have gone off the rails, time to break the glass and press the button sort of component in there. To date, we have only hit in a retroactive run of the model, red a couple times. So here is these are the 5 data indicators that control the scoring of the model. Basically, each of these can generate a score from 0 to 3, depending on how the data is operating. And then you add that together to a maximum score of 15. So number 1, risk assessments. Those are calls or email online submissions that the health district is receiving that people are seeking a COVID test. And so then they go through and take a look about scheduling them. COVID test positivity. This is a measure of how many of the tests administered, how many tests are coming back positive. We want to keep that percent as low as possible. Daily new cases. This is normalized by population. It's just a tracking 7-day average of how many new cases we're getting in the region, and we have certain class breaks on that. Medical interventions due to COVID. This is hospitalization due to COVID combined with ICU bed use due to COVID, and we get that information from the Nevada Hospital Association. And finally, hospital capacity. This is really about making sure that, we have the capacity to handle COVID and other events that could happen, and we could have a flu epidemic or whatever might come through. And so we're tracking the availability of hospital beds and the availability of ICU beds. That data also comes from the Nevada Hospital Association. Here are just quickly some of the model parameters. You can kind of see in terms of the risk assessment, it's a measure of, are we getting more risk assessments? Are more people calling in to get tests, or are less people calling in? With test positivity, we've been working on these boundary conditions here, and we kind of lean towards 3% based on advice from the state medical doctor, Dr. Zom, and as well the governor's reopening sort of strategy. 7% test positivity is a threshold there. These class breaks for the new daily cases come from the Harvard Health Institute, I believe, that put that out there for the entire every county in the nation. So we adopted that. In terms of medical interventions, this again is showing, are more people being hospitalized? Are more people being put in the ICU beds because of COVID, or is it actually going down? And so we're measuring a percent change. And then finally, the hospital administrators that joined the call on that task force call suggested these buckets, these class breaks for hospital capacity. So, we have to get over 90% capacity to really generate a very high score. Here's how the model in its current form has performed over the past 2 months. And so you can see there's these colors in the background: green, yellow, orange, red, purple. And then this line represents every daily score that's generated based on those data. And right around the 4th of July is when we've seen the biggest proliferation of cases in the data, and also it's where our model responded accordingly, and then dropped off after the 4th. And since then, we've been pretty much hovering between a high yellow and a low orange condition. Recently, that's gone up a bit to somewhat higher orange. That has to do with how we're looking at test positivity now directly from the state and this new class breaks, I think. And then you can see here's the scoring. If you are in 0 or 1, very tough to get down to 0 or 1 to have a green condition, but that would be an amazing win for the community for us to get there. There's 4 yellow spots, 4 orange, 4 red, and then 2 purple at the top. In terms of some considerations and potential next steps, we're going to continue to look at validation of sort of the accuracy of this model. It's really an additive model, and it's designed in such a way that, if all 5 of those indicators are running super high, if we're increasing, people are calling in, test positivity has gone up, lots of new cases, the hospital interventions are increasing, and our hospital capacity is diminishing, that's going to start generating red and potentially purple conditions. But thankfully, our region has done really well in terms of keeping that down. And finally, obviously, especially now, given your guys' discussion and vote, we're looking forward to trying to work with and assist other regional entities like the health district and potentially the school district, not to take over or anything, but to provide information that can be helpful. So with that, I'll stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? Ms. Burktigler.
Thank you. So Jeremy, so if I understood your closing comments, then to the purpose to this whole thing is to be to put all the information together to benefit other agencies.
Really, it's designed to benefit the community and to provide the community a very simple graphic way to understand kind of how the COVID data that's being reported, is gelling or aligning together. So if all those things are increasing and we're seeing those conditions escalate, basically, the COVID threat meter will escalate along with. But along with that, the data will be available, at some point online, and other entities like the university or the health district can utilize that information as one source of information, right, to continue planning for this response effort. And I would just add that also, I am never in favor, ever, of just trusting what a model says out of hand and just taking the results and saying, now we're going to go do this. I mean, that's one element that can help us it's a decision support tool, basically, to help us make decisions.
And Ms. Burktigler, if I may just follow, the way that, as Jeremy's developed this, the way that I've looked at it is rather like a speedometer on a car. The driver's in the driver's seat, the speedometer's information. Given a particular road condition and a 65-mile-an-hour speed limit, you may decide to only go 50 because it's raining, 70 because it's a bright, beautiful day and there's no cars on the road and no police, 30 maybe if it's snowing and there's ice on the road. The point is that the driver, the people in the driver's seat, the people making decisions get to use this as information, but it doesn't make a decision for them. And I'll use one more example that I've thought about, which is the fire burn code. So with fires, they look at soil moisture, they look at vegetation growth, they look at what happened last year, how many days of 95 do we have in a row? They look at, is it windy, is it not windy? What are the conditions? And then they put out a code. And based on the code, we as individuals get to make some decisions about our behavior. The people that are deciding may say, no campfires. And an agency, to your point, like a Forest Service, could even say, the fire code's red. We're going to close down this one campground that everybody goes to because they always like to make fires, and we can't really control that behavior. But really, it's up to all of us, to change our behavior based on what's going on in the environment. So that's the way I've been thinking about it. But
no, thank you. I appreciate that, but really, that's not answering my question.
Okay.
My question is, to what purpose is this? I mean, don't get me wrong. So let me just kind of make it clear. I'm totally fine with putting this together. I'm totally fine with the cost, if that's what we have to do, if this is really going to serve a purpose, if that's what this is for, is to serve a major purpose. I just don't see the purpose. I mean, I don't see how this collection of information that's already available somewhere else is going to change the way we're doing things through the health district. This may help the health district a great deal. I listened to Mr. Dick earlier, and it sounds like he's very much in favor of this. I'm all for data. I think data is a great thing. I just am not all for spending a great deal of taxpayer dollars to do something that is already being done somewhere else. So, I mean, that would be my only concern about this, and I voted for it. I'm totally in favor of it. I love Jeremy. He's the best of the best of the best, and so I'm not trying to complain here. I'm just stating for the record that it's not clear to me, at least, and I spend a lot of my time dealing with COVID and the facts related to COVID and how it's impacting our community on the greater level. And it just isn't clear to me how this is really going to benefit the citizens.
Okay. Dr. Smith?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I think a couple things jump out to me. Number one is it is difficult to get this breadth of data together for our local county. Most of these things are presented at a state level, And there is a difference between what's going on in Northern Nevada and what's going on in Southern Nevada. So that was one aspect. And I think the second aspect is that it's contextual. Often we see numbers come out onesie twosie, like there was so many of this one day and there was so many of that. But what this does is contextualizes those pieces of data we discussed in terms of the overall trend. And so that's pretty important. 50 cases a day might be really good, but in a vacuum, it might sound really bad. So I think trying to communicate that kind of information, it's pretty darn good at that.
I'm going to add one more thing at the risk of, if you may not like this answer too, but just as a scientist, we have a saying in our field, which is that you're data rich and information poor. So in other words, there's a lot of data floating around, but for all of us to make sense of that data and turn it into information that we can use for anything is very challenging. And that's why it's often the missing step is to convert these raw numbers into something that's meaningful that we can then take action. And that's just, in the field I work on, that's kind of a given, is that we collect. If we don't spend any time on analyzing, processing, and putting it in a different form, it's not that helpful. So that's just what I've experienced. But anyone else want to comment or questions for Dr. Smith on this? Mr. Hartung, did you? Okay. I just want to make sure I've gotten everybody. I didn't know if it looks like Mayor Sheevy's still with us. I know we're past. And one of the things I guess that just comes to mind is things like the air pollen count, the UV count. I mean, we all get to make decisions based on the information. They've consolidated all of that, but if they just gave us raw numbers and never gave context, it might be rather difficult. All right, well, I'm not seeing any other hands raised. I'm just trying to give ample opportunity to quiz Jeremy in advance of any kind of press release or discussion. Mr. Lawson, anything? Nothing? Okay. All right, well, seeing none, please lead us to the next part of the agenda, which are reports. And I don't know if we have any reports in it. Looks like we have a Board of Trustees member report. Would anyone like to make a comment under that? Ms. Holland, for example?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the conversation, and I apologize that you all are taking shots at public comment that are directed to the school board. It was never our intent to rely on the COVID task force threat meter as directive to us, but we certainly appreciated the opportunity to hear from the epidemiologists and infectious disease specialists and physicians who certainly have a lot of information that we don't have in making a decision that is really important for the whole region. So I want to also thank Dr. Smith and the entire task force for, and Chairwoman Doerr for letting us be a part of that discussion, just sitting in and observing and listening. It is certainly going to be helpful to us as we make a decision on Tuesday of next week about what we would do to lead to a situation where we would close schools.
Okay.
Yeah, so lots of things going on at the school district. Happy to answer any questions that anyone has. We will be continuing to report to the public where we have case incidents of COVID and what schools are affected. And that is actually significantly more than other school districts in Nevada are reporting in their communities. So we want to continue to do that. So appreciate the opportunity to be part of the conversation today, and thank you all for the difficult work that everybody is doing for the region at this very, very difficult time.
Okay, thank you so much for being here and that perspective. I feel for you right now. The school board's in the hot seat, and you have a lot of parents, teachers, bus drivers, and students who all have an opinion about what you should be doing and how. And I don't envy you in any way.
Well, and if I could just add, we have had 18 cases confirmed with a population of 63,000 students and 8,000 employees. So I think that's a testament to our region that the things that everyone in the community is doing, wearing masks regularly, doing social distancing. Who knows what the future brings, but that's pretty amazing to have 18 cases in 70,000 plus people.
Yeah, that are working close together. So, Okay, thank you so much. And then we turn to item 6B, which is member and directors reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick report for you. Our next regularly scheduled RPGB meeting is for October 8th. That's Thursday. It'll be at 2 p.m. Odds are it will probably be via this Zoom platform. In addition to the presser tomorrow, the school board has asked me and Dr. Nielsen, who's on the task force, to speak to them on next Tuesday night's meeting. So I wanted to make sure you were aware of that. And finally, just to reiterate, I appreciate your comments and patience with me. I understand that got kind of wonky on the process here, and so just that will not be a problem going forward. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And you mentioned, I just wanted to say how grateful I am that you were willing to step up and help out with this emergency and on your own time. And just so the board knows too, even if we had not, Dr. Smith said he was willing to continue to the extent he could. But thank you guys very much for this support. That is wonderful. Legal counsel report, item C. Anything for us, Ms. Prunty? No? Okay. We'll go next to item 7, request for future agenda items. We already heard one, which was to talk about a board protocol, and do we need additional protocols given a potential misstep, unintentional though it might be, but just more clarity. So I'm happy to put that on agenda. Is there any other desire for future agenda items right now? You can always contact me later. Okay, I don't see any. We have, again, public comment to wrap up. Is there any other? No further public comment? Okay. Any written correspondence?
We have none.
Okay. And then I will declare we are adjourned. So I appreciate everyone's attendance today, and thank you for your grace and your indulgence and your support. Thank you.
Thank you.